I've got a new material and a new process I'm excited to share with everybody. We've got some Coosa board here, but in tongue and groove configuration, which I think is pretty cool. Now, if you've been following the channel and saw our build when we were building our Buskins 29 there in the background, we used a lot of Coosa, but typically you would be going like one sheet and then like a butt block underneath and then another sheet. Of course, these pieces do have the tongue and groove milled in, and you would run screws and fasteners through that to be able to join sheet to sheet. But with the tongue and groove configuration we got today, we should be able to glue this together with a thickened putty that we made using the high-end vinyl ester laminating resin from Fiberglass Warehouse. Y'all know, if you've been following the channel, that is by far my favorite resin to work with. It combines a lot of the strength, the waterproofing, and bonding ability of epoxy, but it's completely compatible with Gelcoat, and it's just easier to saturate cloth with it. So I really, really like it. But one thing you can do is take that vinyl ester and make custom fillers and putties using different combinations of like a fumed silica, and we've got some milled fibers. Now these are my two go-to. That's from Fiberglass. It's a fumed silica. I hope the camera picks up that part number there. That's a 15721. And then the 1/4 inch milled fibers. That's a 1579815. Mix those two together and you can get a very strong, very adaptable filler or putty. So that's what we're going to be using, and I'm going to be jumping right into this. But first off, I want to introduce myself. My name is Joe Buskins. If you're new to the channel, I want to welcome everybody. This is our family's boat shop. This is the custom 29 footer that we built a couple years ago. We run in our charter business, and the channel has over 170 DIY related fiberglass videos to help the DIYers at home get professional level advice and content to help you guys work your way through your project. So welcome to the channel, everybody. So what we did to save time, again, I went ahead and made up a couple ounces there. We did 2 ounces of the vinyl ester laminating resin, and then I did a total of about 8 spoonfuls of each of the milled fibers and some of the fumed silica. Now, you may have to play around with that a little bit to get different consistencies, but I think this is going to work for what we're doing today. Now, I always have a little cheat sheet here looking at your amounts. 1 ounce of resin is going to take about 10 to 20 drops of your MEKP. Now, if you order from Fiberglass Warehouse, you're going to get these little bottles like this, the MEKP. That's a 0812. And again, don't forget to use your Fish Bump TV discount code if you order from those folks. They've got everything we're using here today, from the resins, Gelcoat, Fiberglass, the additives. They've got you covered there, and you can save some money with that Fish Bump TV discount code. So temperatures are fairly high today. The amount of catalyst we're going to add has a lot to do with how warm. It's 29 degrees Celsius, or we're looking at about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm not going super crazy. We're going to go somewhere, in the range of about 15 drops per ounce. So we've got about 2 ounces here. That should get us pretty close. Tell me if if y'all were watching at home and could get a count on that. Now, we do this so much, I'm pretty used to mixing it a lot by sight. You'll notice this is going to go from like a purple in color to take on almost a brown tone. That is very common with activated or catalyzed vinyl ester and polyester resins. We want a good uniform mix. The hotter it is, the less MEKP you're going to need, but I generally don't recommend going below 1% or above 2%. It's kind of the high-low. Really good thorough mix. Now, this is purely for demonstration purposes, so I'm going to try to fly through this today. Sometimes when you do the mix and you think about it, you're like, you know what, I might add a couple more drops just to be sure. It might be better in some cases to be slightly over-catalyzed than under-catalyzed. The only downside to over-catalyzing is it's going to go faster, so you're going to have to work a little faster to get that material down in a timely manner. So I've got another little trick I want to show everybody. This is the Ziploc bag trick, because we're going to be dispensing that into that little groove. What we will do is take our activated and mixed putty that we made. Now, obviously on a small demonstration piece like this wouldn't be absolutely necessary. But if you're doing something bigger where you're trying to add quite a bit of putty or filler down in a real tight little space or spot, it almost makes like a piping bag. Like if you were doing some pastry work. So here we go, folks. Right down in that groove. I would say that's pretty sweet. Now, we should be able to, I actually put some marks on here previously and did a little bit of test fitting and sanding. I'm gonna work these two together and see if we can get a little bit of squeeze out, which we are. And I've got another little shop tool here that if you don't have some of these, I don't know if y'all can see those little marks I laid on there. That's one of those things I kind of do out of habit. Part of what we call a dry fit. When you're kind of laying all this stuff out and prepping it, I like to kind of see how everything's going to go together. But these little Irwin quick grips or something comparable. Matter of fact, everything we use here on these tables, either you're going to source from Fiberglass Warehouse, use that Fish Bump TV discount code, or look below our video's description, and we've got a very nice Amazon store now with tons of descriptions and pictures and things we use on here, either comparable or exactly what we're showing. But open these little guys up and just squeeze and walk it in, and you should be able to see some squeeze out developing there, joint to joint. It's very nice. Very nice. All right, here we go. I like to see nice uniform squeeze out everywhere. Make sure that's nice and flat. Y'all notice we got this cool little table here, kind of something that I've shown before on the channel, but when you don't want things to glue or stick to, if you're trying to do two sides and you're gluing or laminating things together, you can use that. We've just ran screws. Here's another one, an example of it. We've just ran standard screws, self-tappers up through. You can set this down and then you can actually work on two sides at once and not worry about it sticking to your base or your board. Now, not a bad idea to use a little blade here. Let's do a little tooling or cleaning up. Get things nice and tidy. We like to work neat. And we should be able to flip this over. Now, you could certainly do something similar to this, again, on your projects as you're assembling a floor, for example. Now, I don't know about using this outside of like a floor-to-floor and in a manner where this is supported in some way. We're gonna have to do some testing on this to see how it goes, but what I plan to do is, like, say for example, this application, when we're working on our project boat, we got new stringers coming in and you're cutting these panels of Coosa and you can attach them tongue and groove. Now, they're gonna be offering that from Coosa. One of the best sources I've found, if you want to order it online, is from Boat Outfitters. They're at www.boatoutfitters.com. Mention that you saw this on Fish Bump TV. They'll help you out for sure. And then if you've got a router table and are so inclined doing woodwork, you can actually buy a tongue and groove router bit. Now, I will tell you, the Coosa, the fiberglass in it can be a little hard on router bits. It absolutely will do it. They're just going to wear out a little bit faster. But you could set up and actually make your own tongue and groove Coosa board. So I think that's pretty cool, and I don't really know why I hadn't thought about doing this previously, because it's one of those things, familiar with the process, but being able to get it directly from Coosa is super, super cool. Now, what I think we're going to do, folks, is I'm going to give this a little while to set up as it is. I'm going to clean up my little glue table here. We got a little bit of squeeze out, which I typically like to see. After that kicks off, we're going to come back with some 1708 biaxial. That's got your CSM on the back side with a 45-degree weave. and we're gonna put a layer on either side, wet it out with some vinyl ester, and then stress test this thing a little bit and see how it looks. We've given that about an hour or so to cure, and it feels quite solid and looks good. Now, I did prime this Coosa with some resin, like I said, before we fiberglass. Sometimes you'll get little lumps and bumps on there, or when you glue something together. So I'm gonna take a little piece of older 40 grit paper, a little piece of Air-X foam before we fiberglass, and just maybe knock down some of these little burrs and whatnot. Now, some people think you can't sand resin that hasn't had wax added to it, and this is straight vinyl ester laminating resin with no wax. We've given it about an hour, and yes, it will gum up the paper a little bit here and there, but you can absolutely hand sand it and even use power tools if you need to. So it's kind of one of those things. I know if you're new to fiberglass, theoretically, to get it to fully cure and be completely tack-free, yes, you need to put some wax additive in it, but don't feel like you have to in every case. And in this situation, you absolutely would not want to put any wax in it, because we're going to be going over it with more layers. So wax only on the very last coat if you're doing something like this. Our family has been building boats since the 1960s and has built hundreds of them, and we never used wax like on our resins. If we're going to finish, a lot of times we use Gelcoat with wax in it to finish out a compartment. All right, that's looking pretty good, I would say. There was a little bump right there. Not a bad idea to kind of knock some of this stuff down prior to glassing. Now, some PPE is always a good idea. We're in a big open shop here, and we got some nice airflow through here. But if you're at home, I would recommend wearing a nice respirator, or having a fan blowing and getting the fumes out of here. Always a good idea to agitate your resin a little bit before you pour it up. And we're going to start pretty conservatively. I believe we're going to go with 4 ounces initially, and that would be, oh, that looks like that'd be about 125 milliliters or so for you folks on the metric system. There we go. And we're going to mix this pretty hot. Now, it's probably going to take a little more than that. You know what, on second thought, I think I'm going to go more like 6 ounces. Just want to have plenty. 6 ounces, and we're going to go, according to our little chart, somewhere between 4 and 8. And if we go to 1%, it'd be 1.25 or 2.5. Let's go with about 3.5 or 4 cc's or so. And we've got our little graduated squeeze cup. That first mark is going to be 5 cc's. I'm going to go just under that. Now, this is, again, your methyl ethyl ketone with peroxide. Definitely don't want it on your skin. Don't want it in your eyes for sure. Some good safety glasses. Check this out, how this vinyl ester resin is going to change colors on us. It's going to kind of go from a purple to a brownish green. Good thorough mix. Your polyesters and vinyl esters are going to be a little bit thinner in viscosity than most of your epoxies, and they are much easier to wet out or saturate fabric. A lot of people wonder what their boat is made out of as far as compatibility. This boat, when we built our 29-footer there in the background, that was an ISO polyester resin, which is a high caliber polyester resin, and Fiberglass Warehouse carries that as well. But for most of you folks that are kind of going back and doing repairs and tying into stuff, I like the vinyl ester. Now, vinyl ester will foam up a little bit when you activate it. That's okay. We've got our pan ready. One of my little tricks, again, you folks at home watching have seen me use the tape to help remove any little hairs or extra burrs off of that roller. And the roller is going to make quick work. I also like to do what I call a 2-pot method. You're going to get a longer working time if you pour your resin out of the cup, because it's a chemical reaction going on there. And as we mentioned earlier, when we checked our air temperatures, temperature has a lot to do with how fast this stuff cures. The hotter it is, the faster it cures. And when you put it in a large mass or a large cup, it kind of holds heat within itself, and you're just going to get more airflow and a longer working time with it in a pan. Always like to apply a base coat of resin before we lay down our fabric. Biaxial 1708 is probably one of my favorite materials if I were to recommend somebody putting one type of fabric in their arsenal at home or their kit. The 1708, it is compatible with all your resin types, so it'll work just fine with vinyl ester, polyester, and even epoxy. Work that in nice and thoroughly. You do not want any opaqueness or opacity with that. You want it quite transparent. Sometimes it takes a moment for it to really work its way into and through the fabric. I want to thank everybody that has been tuning in. The channel's been growing. We've been having fantastic response from everybody, not only here in the States, but internationally. So I want to thank everybody so much. I want to thank our Patreons for their support of the channel and our folks that are working with us through Patreon for consulting. So if you're at home and you have a project boat and you're enjoying the videos, but you need more information, if you want to get in touch with me directly, that's capable through or able to do that through Patreon, and we can schedule some time. We can talk on the phone. You can send me some pictures of your personal project, and I can tell you what I think or what I would recommend you may or may not need to do, help you get that done. And then folks, we're also seeing a lot of interest in our Facebook group page. So if you got a project you're working on and want to see other folks working on boat projects like yours, maybe some inspiration, you may want to check out our Facebook group page as well. All right, so that was about perfect, 6 ounces for a piece that size. You can see it's going fairly transparent at this point. I'm going to give that a minute. I'm going to give that a minute to soak. Now you can absolutely, if we're mixing this fast, say I'm going to do the other side, you can go ahead and pour up another batch. Let's go with another 6 ounces. That was about right for one side. Until you get familiar or comfortable with this stuff, probably working in smaller batches and doing multiple batches is going to be better for you. And we can go right back into the pan, and as long as we're moving forward with this, it's fine. But if you stop or wait for any amount of time, a lot of times you'll get these little jelly blobs in there, and if that starts to happen or your roller starts to get hard, I recommend you stop at that point. And you're basically going to have to put a new roller in, get a new pan. You can see it's changed colors, it's kind of foaming up, and you're going to need to just start with a fresh batch, start all over again. But it is okay with this kind of resin to do this. Boat shops use it. That's when big factories are building boats one right behind the other. They're definitely going one batch over the other. Now I've got my acetone bucket here, and I like to keep some of my rollers. That's our little grooved roller or hard roller. That is fantastic for working some of the bubbles out of this material. It's a little bit on the dry side. I think I'm going to add a little more so we can go straight in with our new batch. I've got a lot of practice at this, folks, and sometimes there's just a feel you have to develop from experience. We're trying really hard to teach everybody at home and relay how we do this, but there's no substitute for experience. There we go. That's looking a little better. You can see the difference in the fabric is quite dry, and then we've got a slight sheen. You don't want it soaking wet, just puddles of material everywhere, but you certainly don't want it to have a dry look either. I would veer on the side of better to be a little over-saturated than under-saturated. A little bubble buster or grooved roller is going to really work those bubbles out nicely. Get a very decent transparent look. Now if you were doing a floor on a boat and then we're doing it in Coosa, you would probably do, or what we did on our 29 was one layer of the 1708 biaxial first, and then we did one layer of CSM or chop strand mat. Always like to go back in our acetone bucket. That'll keep that from getting super sticky or tacky. There we go. That's about what it should look like, folks. Now, I'm going to do something again. This is a demonstration piece, and I'm trying to hurry along for everybody. But this is where, for example, I can turn this thing over. If I'm very, very careful, I can just set it on these little spikes, and that'll be minimal impact. And that way we can go ahead and do both sides there. I'm going to try not to drag it sideways. As long as we're just light with it, it should be just fine. Love to hear what kind of projects everybody at home is working on. We've got a ton of comments every week. I try my best to read every one of them. Oh my goodness, the neighbor's dogs are out. Got some little yappers over there. All right, down nice and easy. Take your time. These rollers are the ticket. That is a 3/8 snap. I find that that's the happy medium for doing this kind of work. Very satisfying to do this kind of stuff. I've been talking to folks doing transoms and stringers and floors for the first time, and makes me happy. I'm glad to hear that the videos are finding folks that appreciate what we do and are learning, picking up some useful tips. Sometimes there's a little extra resin in there, and you can use a brush to squeeze a little more. But we're running close on it being right, so I'm just gonna squeeze some out of the roller. There's also a little tool called a 5-in-1 tool that we made a couple videos on. A very handy little tool. Sometimes you get down to the end there and you just need a little more and hard to get it out of the roller. You can use the brush to move it around. It's looking quite nice. And then back to our roller that's been sitting down here in the acetone. That will keep it from getting sticky. Not a big problem if you're working with 1708, but if you're working with CSM, sometimes the hairs want to get wound up in it. And that's one of those little tips and tricks that I would recommend for you folks out there. All right. Very nice. That's looking decent. I like it. I like it. We have given this a couple hours to cure. Feels pretty nice and crispy there. Got some blocks of wood, or some blocks of cement blocks. Show you folks at home, that stuff is pretty good. That's pretty tough, and it's going to get a little bit stronger or tougher as it has a little more time to cure. That's still somewhat what I would call green. And we're going to do some more testing on that, kind of see what the full range of application are. But like I said, I can immediately see, like when we're putting floor panels in, like in our project boat or some other applications where you want to link these panels together. We'll see where this goes, but I hope y'all enjoyed that video. Certainly can reach out to boat outfitters for some of your tongue and groove, or reach out to Coosa and see, or you could possibly even make some of your own by taking the Coosa sheets and then picking up a router bit for that. And then be sure to take advantage of our Fish Bump TV discount code at Fiberglass Warehouse there to save you some money on your products. It's Captain Joe here, Island Marine Charters, Fish Bump TV. My son Logan working hard behind the scenes as my amazing cameraman, and we'll catch you folks in the next episode.